Welcome everybody to this episode of Prodigy Simply Fit podcast. I am Andrew with Prodigy Fitness, and this is Coach Kaleigh. She's our head coach here at Prodigy. And we wanted to start off this season of our podcast with an episode on goal setting. I think goal setting is something that is really big right now, even though we're kind of in the middle of February. Goal setting is still something that people are talking about, right? We get a lot of our members or prospective members talking to us about what goals they want to accomplish in the new year. Unfortunately, some people have kind of fallen off the wagon already, right? But I think it's a good time to maybe kind of refresh exactly what goal setting is and maybe some strategies. We've got 5 strategies for you guys today to talk about how you can best be successful with goal setting. All right. So why don't you kind of kick it off with kind of our first strategy for somebody?
Yeah, our first strategy is going to be to establish the right mindset. It's really tough sometimes to believe in yourself, especially when you're your own biggest advocate. Walking in the gym can be intimidating in itself, so let alone thinking, in 2 months I can deadlift 100 pounds or whatever one of your goals are. Like, that's really like a stretch for some people.
Yeah.
So it's important to establish the right mindset, right? And to be able to break down those goals into something that you really believe that you can do. Because if you don't believe it, there's a 0% chance of it happening. You won't be able to align like your successes, your other like goals and the things that you need to do outside of the gym and outside of, your other lifestyles, like in order to establish this goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to that point, right, it's very much like we have to develop or you have to develop the identity of, it's not necessarily I'm somebody who wants to get in shape, right? Or I'm somebody who wants to lose weight, or I'm somebody who wants to run a marathon. It's I am somebody who is this, right? Like it's that mindset, right? Like you very much have your mindset of, I'm an Olympic lifter. Like this is I'm not just somebody who does Olympic lifting, right? Like this is who I am. And I think that goes a long way, right? Like, we always talk about, with our members at the gym, when you're walking up to a deadlift, right? You're walking up to a bar, like if you don't believe that you're going to do this, like the chances are you're probably not, or you're going to struggle with it. Like you very much have to have that right mindset. And I think that it goes along the same thing with our goals, right? Like personal, 100%. Professional, whatever they may be, like you have to believe that you can achieve that, right? Like you're going to be competing, this year in some competitions, like you have to walk into these competitions going, hey, you know what? I fully wholeheartedly believe like I'm going to achieve the three numbers that I set out to do. Right?
Yeah, and at the end of the day too, like if you walk up to the bar, like for example, if your goal was to deadlift 200 pounds by the end of the year, if you walk up to that bar at the end of the year and you didn't do X, Y, and Z to put yourself in the best position to hit that goal weight and that number, and it doesn't happen, at the end of the day, like that's a reflection on yourself,
right?
And how much you worked, and at the end of the day, how much you believed in yourself. Because if you really believed in yourself enough, like you would get that extra hour of sleep at night. Like you would show up to the gym on the days that you should. Like you would be doing the things that catapult you to make the best decisions for yourself. But it's about that discipline and that drive, right? Like you never want to be at that end setting of your goal, at that 100-pound loss mark, at the 200-pound deadlift mark, and realize looking back, you could have done more.
Right, exactly. And I think that, unfortunately, people kind of come up with the excuses, right? Because they don't, getting in shape, for example, right? For somebody may be extremely outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right? Like it may be a massive step. And so for them to prevent themselves from getting outside of that comfort zone, right? To prevent them from potentially being in a situation that they're not sure about, they make up excuses. Like one of the ones that we always chuckle about, and actually drives me nuts, is the idea I'm not in shape enough to come work out at your gym.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
we get that a lot.
What? Like that's so, kind of backwards in the idea, no, you come here to get into shape, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of, not being in shape, I think is just a crutch that people are used, it's just an excuse for them to say, hey, you know what, I'm just not ready yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just not in shape yet. When in reality, that's not the right mindset to have. Right?
Yeah. Even in weightlifting, at the end of the day, it's a lot of people use the term balance. They like to use the term balance as a crutch too. So for example, are you eating in and out as balanced to have that like 80-20 rule
Right,
to have
right,
like
right,
your
right.
enjoyable meals? Are you eating in and out and calling it balanced just because you want to have in and out, right? That's what separates like the people who are going to make it and the people who are going to fall off.
Correct, absolutely. And I think this leads into kind of our next point of, you know, at the end of the day, right, you have to prioritize yourself.
Yes.
Right? Like, and I think if you make yourself a priority, then the mindset, right, or if you fix your mindset, then it's much easier to make yourself a priority, right?
Yes.
Like, one of the things I think that we deal with most, right, we work primarily with busy adults, right? And let's say we kind of lean more towards busy moms, right? And one of the things that we always get is, I just don't have time, right? I just don't have time. I'm shuttling Johnny around, you know, to his baseball practice, and I'm shuttling Susie around to her dance, and I've got to, you know, do this, and I've got to do that, and I'm holding an 8-hour job. Like, I don't have time for myself. But when in reality, what they're fearful of is being selfish, right? Like, because I think at the heart of it, like, people are inherently good, right? Like, and they don't want to be selfish, right? They don't want to be viewed as that, right? And so I think that when people think, oh, well, if you take this hour out for yourself, you know, like, oh, that's like, you should be at home helping your kids with their homework, but no, you're working out for yourself. Like, that's really selfish of you. And I think people are very fearful of that.
Yeah, I think I love to use like the pitcher analogy.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I know I love using that in like both like a mental health and a physical health standpoint, but like, imagine you have like a glass of water and everybody around you who cares about you and that you help provide for also has a glass of water. If you're pouring your cup of water, your energy into everybody else's glass, but yours is never being refilled, you're going to run out of water, and it's going to be really fast. If you've got 2 kids, if you've got a husband or wife, if you've got like a demanding job, if you have extracurricular activities you like to do, at the end of the day, you're going to have nothing left for yourself.
Right.
How are you going to fill up your own glass in order to be there for everyone else?
Correct.
If you experience burnout, if you're not taking care of yourself physically or mentally, you're not going to be much of a help to everybody else around you. So at the end of the day, like, working out and establishing those goals and those boundaries, prioritizing yourself helps you fill your glass back up to be more available to other people.
Right.
Although you think like it's being selfish taking this hour of the day to benefit yourself, all you're doing is making yourself more available, more enjoyable to be around, and more helpful to everybody else in the gym.
Right, and it's along the same lines of like airplanes, right? Like, you know, they always say, you know, in the event of an emergency, like, put your mask on first before you help somebody else put theirs on, because at the end of the day, if you can't put yours on or you pass out for whatever reason, like, you're not helping anybody, right?
No.
So I very much agree with that analogy, and I love every time you talk with all of our new members about, you know, that analogy, and you can see like the light switch kind of flip on and like, oh, like, okay, I'm starting to understand and starting to realize that it's not selfish of me, right, to prioritize myself. And I think, you know, kind of Tony Robbins uses this as an example, or uses this kind of this commenter, and he says, you know, when you ask the right questions, you kind of open up a lot of things in your life. And so one thing, for example, like my business coach always challenges me is to ask better questions. And so I think to use that with prioritizing yourself, it's not using the question of, you know, how can I prioritize myself, and, you know, over others, right? Like, how can I prioritize myself over my family, over my kids, over my job, my work, whatever it may be. And I think that very much puts you in a negative mindset, right? Like, that puts the negative spin on, like, oh yeah, you very much are prioritizing yourself over all these other things. When in reality, if you flip that question around and you ask a better question of, how can I better myself to, in a sense, better other people, right? That totally flips the mindset around, right? Like, that totally makes it very much of me benefiting myself and helping out myself is going to help others.
Yeah,
right.
I think too, like even with social media and stuff these days, you get a lot of people doing like, I want to do it all. I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best worker. I want to be, you know, the best person in the gym, like all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, first of all, if you're comparing yourself to people online, like, you only get, that's
a whole different podcast right there.
Yeah,
right?
The snippets of their best life. And number 2, like, you have to think, like, I'm doing the best I can with the circumstances I've given. Because at the end of the day, like, you're probably not like an Instagram and TikTok influencer that works, you know, their hours, are a lot more flexible. Like you're working a 9 to 5
Right,
and you're
exactly.
picking your kids up from school every day. You are doing the best you can with the circumstances you've been given.
Right.
And when you start to explain that to yourself and tell yourself that over and over again, and our job here is to meet you where you're at, right? Like that's why we have these flex scheduling hours. That's why we try to make it available for you.
Right.
Make it almost like a thought-free process to come in here, grab your binder and get to work. Because at the end of the day, most people that come in here probably don't have time to sit there and write their own workout program.
Absolutely.
And we're here to take away that intense experience of the gym to allow yourself to just come in and make this a priority for yourself.
Right. And I think to further that point, right, I think sometimes people think, especially with fitness, right, I have to work out an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, right? We have all of these old myths and misconceptions, right, about fitness, when in reality, hey, you know what, prioritize yourself by just going for a walk, right? Getting away and maybe telling your significant other, hey, you're going to be with the kids for 10 minutes while I go for a walk and I just get, right? Or it's, hey, you know what, while the kids are napping, I'm getting, 15 minutes of a quick little workout in. You're prioritizing yourself. You don't necessarily need the hour, right?
Yeah.
To prioritize yourself. So anything is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's, one thing that we talk with all of our members here as well is hey, if you can come in and give us 30 minutes, easy. We'll get you in and out in 30 minutes. If you can stay for 45 or you can stay for an hour, awesome. But you don't have to be here for 7 hours out of your day, right? In order to really see some good benefits, not only physically, but mentally as well. And I think that's where a lot of our members are really seeing the most benefit from working out is the mental benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that goes back to our point one. You got to believe in yourself and you got to do it. At the end of the day, thinking about taking that workout as when your kids are napping for 15 minutes, thinking about going for that walk, you're not doing that. You got to get up and you got to do it, right?
Absolutely.
So let's shift our focus on how do we structure these goals for success, right? Now that we know that we believe in ourselves, we prioritize ourselves, how are we going to challenge ourselves, make these goals and make them realistic for us, right? At the end of the day, if I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to clean and jerk 400 pounds in 2 months, it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
How do we find a realistic timeline that's going to allow us to feel confident and feel like we're just going to crush this goal, right? Because at the end of the day, confidence is key.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, people, when it comes to goal setting, right, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, right?
100%.
But within that, there's multiple ways to go about the right way. But I think what we've really kind of adopted is what we call the smarter principle, right? So there's the SMART principle. Everyone knows about SMART, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-driven, right? Michael Hyatt, who's a business coach, came up with the smarter principle, and a lot of similarities. But I really like how he. I think oftentimes when people think I need to make a goal achievable, right? They make it a little too easy, right? And so he kind of twisted some things around and I think made it a little bit more of a stretch for people. So still kind of starting off with specific, right? Like you had said, right? If I set the goal, we hear this all the time. One of the first questions we ask members.
I want to lose weight.
Right. We ask members hey, what do you want to accomplish while they're here, right? And I want to lose weight.
Yep.
Awesome. Great. Give us more, right?
Yeah.
That's so vague, right? And we want specifics because, right, the more specific you can be with your goals, the better it's going to be to set an action plan. The better it's going to inspire you to actually do that, right? If you were hey, you know what, I want to start Olympic lifting. Great. You're awesome, cool.
What's next,
right? Where do I go from there, right? But when I'm specific, I want to lose X amount of pounds, right? Or I want to deadlift X amount of weight. I want to be able to run a, sub whatever mile or 5K or 10K, whatever it is. It's more specific and it gets that creativity kind of going in your mind to say I can get there because of doing these things.
That also covers the M, measurable. So if you want to lose 10 kilos by, October, by your 40th birthday or whatever it is, then you have a measurement based activity to focus on, right? Because at the end of the day, if you just want to learn how to deadlift, how are we measuring success in that, right? Does deadlifting 45 pounds mean success to you, or does it mean 200? At the end of the day, what is going to make this, one, a stretch for you, but two, still make like still make it exciting and like something that you look forward to.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you're just getting straight crushed by your goal every single day, like if you're like measurable and then you're like, I want to run a marathon, I haven't ran more than a mile in 20 years and I want to run it in 3 months, you're probably gonna feel really bad by like week 2 or 3, right? So like we want to make something that is measurable and exciting, but still like achievable and like relevant to what you're working on, right?
And I think going on to that point of, for some, right, I think the reason that sports, for example, no matter the sport, right, sports are so exciting for us is because we know the score or we know how the game is won.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so similar to your goals, like picking something that's measurable, like when you've won, right? And I think that that's what's exciting, right?
Yeah.
For people. But also to that point, if I set a goal, let's say I want to deadlift 400 pounds, right? And I've never deadlifted over 100 pounds, right?
Yeah.
It might be a long journey for me. But if things are measured, I can break that long journey up into bite-sized pieces, and I can measure my success along the way, right? Like that's going to help keep me excited. It's going to help keep me kind of moving forward, as opposed to, I'm 2 months into this and I don't feel like I've made much progress at all towards my 400-pound deadlift, right? I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to quit. I'm going to stop. Whereas if I say, hey, you know what, 400, but by month 3, I want to do this. And by month 4, it gives me some measurable goals along the way to help kind of break up that process for us.
Yeah. I think my favorite one within the SMARTER method is probably risky.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
Absolutely.
Like, I know, like, when I set out, honestly, my 2021 goal was to jerk 120 kilos. That didn't happen until February of this year, right? But, like, I tried my very best. And with the circumstance I was given, I like put myself out there and, I laced my shoes every day with that goal in mind. It happened 2 months later, but at the end of the day, I still did it, right?
Absolutely.
And that was a massive like breakthrough for me in just both like training, personal life, and just like confidence. So it was a risky goal. Like it was a risky goal in 2021. And honestly, putting it on the board for 2022, I was like, am I even going to hit this in 2022? But that's when I had to kind of check myself at the door and be right. Like if I don't believe in this, like if I don't put my best foot forward every day, like this will not happen.
Correct.
And I definitely changed my mentality around in the past 2 months in 2022 and was able to break that off in the second month of the year, right? Like if it's not risky, like it's probably not worth your time.
Correct.
Like I'm not talking risky about like injury status and things like that. Like
I'm not getting hurt, right? Exactly.
Yeah, like I'm not telling you to like go deadlift 400 pounds after a month of training. But at the same time, like you want something that will make you be like, wow, I really did that.
Right.
Like if your current goal is not going to be something that you want to stick on a wall and slap across everybody's forehead as you walk by when you finish it, like is this going to be enough to keep you in the gym, to keep you in this habit or this task that you're doing?
Absolutely. And I to that point, right? Like if you can legitimately look at your goal and go, you know what, I can accomplish this now, it's not risky enough, right? Like you don't have to change anything about you, right? Like you don't have to step outside of your comfort zone and push the envelope a little bit. And in reality, like that's what we want, right?
Yeah, so you gotta be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
You gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right. So be risky in the sense of, hey, let's challenge myself a little bit, right? I think we skipped over actionable, or maybe we put measurable and actionable together. So I just want to make sure we hit on that one real quick. But like, what's the action plan, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit with our next point. But like, what are the steps you're going to take to get to your 400-pound deadlift or your 120 kilo, clean and jerk, or whatever? Like, what is it that you're going to do? Time oriented, right? Like, put a deadline on it, right? I think that if we left it open ended, there's no sense of urgency, right? You can just, you know what? I'm just going to sit on the couch for today. I'm not going to do anything, right? You have to put a time limit on it, right? Make it so that way I've got a deadline, and that's going to challenge you to go, okay, like I got to get off the couch. I got to get going. I've got to make this happen.
Yeah. And like, I like, E is exciting. Like, I like that too. Like every time I think about one of the goals that I'm currently working on in like my SMARTER method plans, like I literally get butterflies. Yeah. Like thinking about finishing that goal makes me like it's almost like tears of joy. Like thinking about myself on that platform, hitting that, that goal number, whatever it is, like at the end of the day, like that is an overwhelming feeling. And that will continue with me until the day I hit it. And like, that's kind of what pushes me on the days that I have nothing else left in the tank, right? Yeah. like you want that goal to be something that you are so proud of.
Oh,
and I
absolutely.
think people sell themselves short, like we've talked about this before, but at the end of the day, if you don't believe that you can do it, like you're not going to push yourself to that capacity.
Correct, absolutely.
And then you're not going to be that excited when you hit that goal because you're going to be like, I had more in the tank.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like shoot high, like believe in yourself, because we will believe in you here. Like we will help you. We will be like your accountability partner in terms of like the actionable and measurable stuff. Like at the end of the day, like it's on you to figure out what's going to push you the most.
Right. Like what's going to get you out of bed when it's dark and rainy and cold outside, right? Like I think that's kind of what I always go back to when we talk about exciting, right? Like what's going to wake you up and go, you know what? It's dark, it's cold, it's wet, it's rainy. I don't want to be outside going for my run, but you know what? I've got this exciting goal to accomplish and I know I need to get out and do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like what are those things, right?
And the last one is like relevance. Like if you're an Olympic weightlifter,
right.
having a marathon goal is probably not going to be that relevant to my training. At the end of the day, like as cool as it would be and like as much as I admire people like running marathons and maybe way down the line, I might be able to put that on my goal list. Like right now, it's just not relevant for me. Like if your goal is to, work on like being pain-free, like I probably wouldn't put a 400-pound deadlift on my first thing to do on my goal list, right? Like there's a couple other things we need to do before we get there. So finding something that's relevant to you and your lifestyle is key, because what's relevant to you and to me and to Joe, who's in the gym, like, you know what I mean? Like it's all different.
Absolutely.
So don't compare your goal and like the relevancy of your goal to your life to others.
Absolutely, right? And I think that to that point, right, if you're choosing a goal that's irrelevant to your life, you're only going to get frustrated, right? Like if you're a busy stay-at-home mom of 2 little ones and you decide I'm going to set a goal of getting my PhD, that might not be the best thing for you at this moment. Right? And so when you don't get that, it may just end up fresh. Like, and you kind of go down in this downward spiral of, I'm not good enough. I'm not like, it could go crazy, right? So it's being relevant of, hey, I'm an Olympic lifter. This is what I do. This is who I am. I'm going to set my relevant goal of clean and jerking this, snatching this, competing at this, right? Like those are relevant topics versus, hey, I'm going to go to the moon this year. Like that's probably not relevant unless you're Elon Musk,
I'm going to go do a backflip.
Right. So once we've developed your SMART goal, right? We touched on it a little bit, but number 4, our 4th step is you have to create a plan of action. Right? Like what are the things that you have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to accomplish your goals, right? Because I think often, people set the New Year's resolution of, I want to lose weight, right? Yes, they're vague with it, but then they don't really put a plan of action together. They just kind of wing it. And winging it leads to lack of accountability, lack of consistency. And I think that's a huge one for a lot of people, right? And so by putting your action plan together or creating an action plan and sticking to it, that's really what's going to breed success.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do, like in terms of creating an action plan, is to print off 3 months worth of calendars. So like, and I do this with a lot of members here. And if you're a member at Prodigy and you need help with an action plan, like this is one of my favorite things to do in the gym. Like we print off 3 months of calendars. Like for example, it would be January, February, March for this first quarter. And then we're like, hey, what are the days you're going to come into the gym? Let's say your goal is to deadlift 200 pounds. Like you're going to come in the gym on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're training from home on Thursdays and Saturdays. So that's the first thing to write down, right? The second thing is, okay, well, like we really need to work on mobility. When are you going to do mobility? What is your day going to look like? And you break it down so that there's something every single day on that calendar. So you can post that calendar in your fridge or wherever you're going to see it every day. And every day you walk by, you can check it off.
Right.
Because people love, if I know one thing about people and about myself too, people love lists. People love checking things off. You don't want to check off that one goal 4 months down the road. You want to check something off every day that you're making progress. And the best thing that you can do is to sit down with somebody else and do it. Having that accountability partner makes such a difference, right? Because at the end of the day, if I do this myself, nobody has to see it. Like I live in a studio apartment. Nobody ever has to see my goals written on my fridge. But if I sit down with you and I make this, every day that I come into work, you're going to ask me like, hey, how's your goal going? Did you do this today? I remember we're approaching the end of March, like we need to sit down and make new ones. Can you bring yours in? Right? Like having that like pushes you when you don't want to push yourself because it's easier to let yourself down than it is to let the people around you down.
Absolutely. No, and I think lastly on this point is like, the idea that if I break everything down and I put it on a calendar, I take away the thinking, right? Like we have so many thoughts going on through our head. We don't want to think anymore, right? I think that's probably one of the one thing that we hear a lot is from our members is like, I just come in because I know I don't have to think. You guys have everything laid out for me. I just know I have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you lay out your action plan, you get rid of the thinking. You get rid of the second guessing. You get rid of the whatever it is. Like you just go and go, okay, I know I got to do A, B, and C today to hit my goal, right? Cool. I do A, B, and C. Sweet. I'm done. I move on, right? So I think creating that action plan gives you structure. It helps with consistency. Most definitely, like it helps when you're doing it with somebody else. It helps hold you accountable, right? And I think that's key, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one is you got to go out and execute it, right? Like, what we tell our members all the time, we can write you the best workout plan in the world, right? We can put together the best diet we know how, but if you're not executing that plan, nothing's going to happen, right?
And at the end of the day, like you can tell, like by week 3, 4, 5 of somebody's goal, some of these like smarter goals, like you'll be able to tell if they're doing the work, if they're doing 50% of the work, or they're not doing it at all.
Right.
And it becomes extremely apparent. So don't be that person that sets like all your time and energy into this goal and doesn't pursue it.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like it becomes extremely apparent to everybody, right? And it's always like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start the next day. I'll start next month.
Right.
But like those excuses run dry like really fast,
Correct,
right?
And I think, the idea, and we talked a lot about this last year, but the idea that people wait to be motivated to get started, right? Like, oh, I'm just not motivated, or I'm waiting for the perfect time.
It's discipline, not
right.
motivation.
There is no motivation, right? You're never going to be motivated, right? Like there is never going to be a perfect time. Instead, you should focus on building momentum. Hey, if you want to set a goal of running a marathon, and that's really daunting, great. Just lace up your shoes and go for a walk, right? And then slowly build into a walk jog. And then like slowly work your way up, build momentum to where it becomes easy for you to put your shoes on and go for a run, right? Instead of going, oh, I'm just not motivated today. Hell, Coach Kaleigh's a trainer, or she's a strength coach. I'm a coach as well. I own the gym. Like there's days where we're not motivated to work out, right? Like there's days where people are like, oh, you guys, work at a gym. Like you guys must work out all the time. There's days where I'm like, shoot, like I don't want to do this today, right?
Yeah.
But when you put that action plan together and you have that mindset of this is who I am, and you just execute, right? You go out and you execute, and then 2-3 months down, you look up and you look back and go, wow, like actually I made a ton of progress, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think 2 things on that. The first one, we're a small business, so like there are 20 more things on our plate that we could be doing instead of, carving, like for us to like go and work out, it's carving those times out of the day. It's forcing us to walk outside to get into the gym and to work out, because at the end of the day, there's like, although like I don't have kids or anything like that, I still feel like I have so many other responsibilities that it feels like daunting, right? I'm like, I feel like I need this time for, work or whatever else it is, but I need time for myself at the end of the day. Number 2, like motivation's going to be there at the beginning and it's going to be there at the end. That 80% of the part in the middle that's the meat and potatoes of every single goal that you do is all about like you said, momentum and discipline. What is going to get you to the gym on the days that you do not feel like it?
Right, absolutely. So hopefully those 5 tips helped. We were trying to keep this around 30 minutes because we feel like it's a little bit easier digestible, keeping around 30 minutes. So all of our podcasts are going to be around that. If you guys have any questions, if you're a busy adult in the Tri-Valley and you're interested in a personal training facility that's dedicated to just helping you crush your goals, whether you're a busy mom, you're a busy dad, whether you got aches and pains, whatever your goals are, we'd absolutely love to help you. If you guys found value out of this podcast, please do us a favor, like it, share it with your buddies. That ultimately helps us at the end of the day, kind of spreading our message and getting that out to people. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you guys next week.